I hold the big blockbusters to account enough here on the channel, so I need to do the same with independent movies too. Celine Song made one of the best movies of 2023 called Past Lives, although it did take me 2 watches to appreciate it fully though. It's a gorgeous, sweet, and heartbreaking story of love that never was and never will be. It dives deep into its 2 main characters and tells a tale that spans 2 decades without breaking a sweat. So can Celine follow it with something equally amazing? Let's find out. I've just seen Materialists. Celine Song is one of those filmmakers that just appeared literally out of nowhere, and she made Past Lives. And Past Lives was a piece of wonderful cinema. It was a piece of gorgeous storytelling. We need to compare the Materialists and Past Lives, made by the same person, written by the same person, but from 2 completely different mindsets. One is a story that spans a huge timeline, decades we're talking about, but it's only really about 2 people. And one is a story that focuses on several characters, but is crammed into a very small timeline. And it asks you to look at them in the same way that we look at the 2 characters in Past Lives. I think it works well because it's different, but it's also the same. And that's kind of the idea behind the Materialists. You know, if we think about Past Lives, it's more about the things that people don't say to each other, particularly the 2 main characters. But in the movie, those things remain unsaid forever, except for a very small moment near the end of the film, when the 2 main characters are saying goodbye to each other. There's a moment of silence. That silence says everything. And you know, it's quite a magical moment. Because as I say, nobody says any words. There's nothing said. Nobody even has any particular expression on their face. But they just stand there. And the noises of the street are all around you. And it's just this moment of everything broken down into literally nothing. The whole feeling of everything is right there. Everything that you've experienced in the movie up to this point, it kind of all just hits you. It's such an awesome moment. And it's a moment that we rarely see in cinema, when everything stops, when there's just like literal silence from the characters. It's a small moment, but it's an amazing moment of cinema. And it tells you exactly what you need to know about how those 2 characters are feeling and how they felt up to this point and how they can't say how they really feel, and they'll never say how they really feel. It's really a heartbreaking scene that doesn't have much at all going on. To me, that's like, here's the magic of cinema right here. This is what it can do to you. And Celine Song was able to tap into that. She was able to give the audience that moment, because the film was so beautiful up to that point. It was so measured and it was so poetic. That the movie was poetic. And that moment in the film was so poignant because you understood what it was trying to tell you without it actually telling you anything. Amazing. And it made me think, whatever she does next, how can she follow it? How can she follow a moment of cinema like that? How do you follow it? Do you follow it with the Materialists? Well, practically, yes, you do. But what about on an emotional level? What is this film like? What is this film? People aren't going to be running out of the front doors to the cinema to watch this. I mean, it's not going to happen, right? It's not a huge blockbuster film, for sure. It's out in the summertime, but it ain't a big summer blockbuster. But I thought, you know what? I'm going to do a review of it. I'm going to watch it and I'm going to review it and I'm going to tell you all about it. Because I thought Celine Song's previous work was one of the most beautiful films I've ever seen, certainly from an emotional level. And I thought, okay, no matter what this is like, no matter what her next film is like, I want to talk about it. Most of the ingredients for this film are right. Great director, done. Great writer, done. Same writer and director, of course. A great cast and a great setting. I mean, who doesn't love seeing New York on screen, right? But the premise is like something that you'd have seen from Meg Ryan and Tom Hanks in the 90s. There's a few films like Sleepless in Seattle, or what's the other one called? You Got Mail. I mean, what the hell? Watching the trailer for Materialists, I'm thinking to myself, is this for real? Is this actually really what we're going to get from Celine Song? Because if you watch it, you'll have that same feeling about that rom-com thing. The trailer makes it look like a wishy-washy, splishy-splashy hunk fest. Pedro Pascal and Chris Evans. And, you've got Dakota Johnson, who's kind of like, can kind of mold into any role she wants. Yes, I'm including Madam Web, which is a fantastic B-movie of all proportions of crazy madness. Yes, I'm including Madam Web in that. So let's talk about Materialists. Let's have a little talk about the story just for a second and how we can compare it to Past Lives. Because we have to. We need to compare it to Past Lives. We have to. But I suppose before we do any of that, let's get on the road and we can talk about it on our way home. As always. So basically this film is a romantic comedy. It is. Well, maybe not so much comedy, I suppose. It's definitely romantic. It does have a feeling of love is in the air, you know? It does have that thing going on. What is Materialists about, essentially? What's its storyline? You've got Dakota Johnson, and she plays Lucy Mason, who's kind of, well, she's a failed actress. She did want to tread the boards on Broadway at one point, but it kind of didn't work out for her. So now she's a matchmaker. But she's not the kind of matchmaker that you see very regularly on movies these days. She works for Adore Matchmaking, which is a great name for a matchmaking company, I think. And it's kind of set in New York. And it, you know, anything that's set in New York, you get that sort of Woody Allen vibe, which I know is a negative these days. You know, this film is proud to be set in New York. It's proud to have that New Yorkiness about it. For somebody that spends their whole entire business making people fall in love with each other or matching people up or whatever you want to call it, she's kind of not interested in love herself. She does not want to be involved in that same process. And I think that's because what she does for a living, it seems superficial and it seems wishy-washy, even though everyone tries to take it all seriously. It's just not. It's not a serious thing. And she's convinced herself that she's never ever going to find Mr. Right. That's certainly what we're led to believe at the beginning. At one point, she kind of goes to a list of needs that she has in a partner, you know, in somebody that she will eventually marry. It is extremely superficial. And the thing that's mentioned quite a lot throughout this film is the word money and the price of things and how much things are worth or how much things cost in reference to how she feels about everything. She talks about money quite a lot and she puts money as the first option. Not only to do with partners, but to do with anything really. Anything that she wants to do from a relationship perspective, it has to involve a partner who's rich. It has to involve a partner who can pay for everything that she wants. And I guess you can say that those prayers are answered, right? That superficialness is presented to us right there and right then. It happens, you know, as if by magic, right? At one of the weddings that she's been the matchmaker for, she meets Pedro Pascal, whose character is called something. I can't remember. But whatever. She meets Pedro Pascal. He is kind of everything that she wants. He's handsome, he's rich, and he's making a massive effort to just gently impress her. Knowing what she knows and going through what she goes through and the lifestyle that she has and her job, which is the matchmaker stuff, it's kind of made her hardened to any of that stuff. She doesn't really get what she does in the same way that her clients get what she does. And I suppose that makes sense because, you know, you can't be your job so much, right? Okay, whatever, it's fine. Driving the car with the light on like this and you go to a dark road, right? It's not illegal, by the way, it's fine. People look in and they're like, what the fuck is that person doing? And sometimes I ask myself that same question. What the fuck am I doing? But you know what I'm doing? I'm reviewing Materialists. That's what I'm doing right now. All right, so this is the gut feelings about the Materialists. This is what I was worried about. I was worried about getting that romantic comedy film. I was worried about Celine Song being given a load of money by a film company and saying, look, right, we loved Past Lives. We thought it was great. We thought Past Lives was fantastic. Thank you for making that film. Everyone loved it. It was gorgeous, blah, blah, blah. We've got some money here for you, and we want you to make this film. What worried me was basically that Hollywood was going to grab hold of Celine Song and shake all of the creativeness out of her and demand a film be made with her good name, but they'd be in control of it. You know, that kind of Hollywoodification of everything, that sort of watering down of everything. I think it might be watered down. I think maybe it is. But I don't think that's done because the studio wanted to do that. I don't think they did anything. I think Celine Song made this film exactly how she wanted to. which is completely against what I was worried about. It's nowhere near as moving as Past Lives is, but that doesn't mean that it's a bad film. This film has actually got something that I wasn't expecting. This film takes its concept and sort of turns it on its head, because it makes Dakota Johnson's character look at what she does and look at who she is. And it does that without you even noticing that it's doing it. And it kind of won me over. I literally was ready to be against this film and say, okay, she's sold out. Celine Song has sold out on her second run, but she didn't. She hasn't sold out. This is exactly the way it should be. And I think that's pretty smart. I think that's pretty clever. I think that's quite something, to be fair. I'm glad it is what it is. I'm glad it's what it is. I don't think it could have been done any differently, but we can still compare it against Past Lives. And I think that's important. It's very important because it's a lesson in filmmaking as much as anything else. Somebody having a vision and carrying out that vision exactly the way that they wanted to do it. And Past Lives does that. You know, Past Lives being a new film from a new film director, from a new talent in cinema, Celine Song. It was the film that she wanted to make. I've heard her talk about it many times. I've read some articles about it. I've done all that stuff. It always amazes me by the fact that, you know, she 100% invested herself in it. It was her thing right from the beginning. And that's what made it beautiful as much as good as it was, you know? Materialists worried me for those reasons I mentioned before, which is, you know, is she going to be sold out on this film? Not particularly because she wanted to be, but because she would have been made to, you know, sign on the dotted line and all that kind of thing. Not so long ago, I did a comparison between Flow and Snow White. The reason why I did that is because I wanted to sort of contrast two massive things against each other. The massive thing to do with Snow White was like, well, you know, it's a Disney property and it's got that whole weight of everything behind it. Not just the fact that it's Snow White, but because of the hate that was given to its lead actor. And also the absolute gorgeousness of a film like Flow. Well, this is kind of a similar thing. This is two different films that have come from two different places. You know, Past Lives, half of it is basically set in South Korea, in Korean. So there's subtitles if you're not Korean, and, you know, all of that stuff. There's bits of it in America, in New York, in fact. And the fact that fish out of water thing, not only because the two main characters are Korean and they're in America, but because one of those main characters can't speak English at all, really. And that makes it in a completely alien sort of landscape for them as well. But Materialists is essentially a movie about letting a person unravel in front of us as much as anything else. But unravel in a way where, again, you don't really notice that that's what's happening. It's all sort of structured around what this person does and what she does for other people. But it's all happening to her as well. She's at the singles table, and that's where she meets Pedro Pascal. And Pedro Pascal's character, you know, he's the perfect gentleman. He says all the right things, and he does all the right things. Almost as if it's molded and shaped and perfected to be exactly what Dakota Johnson's character wants. And I suppose we talk about Chris Evans' character, because you've got Pedro Pascal, rich beyond your wildest dreams, at one end, owns a $20 million apartment at the top of some skyscraper in Manhattan somewhere, and you've got Chris Evans' character, who's basically broke as fuck. He lives in a shared apartment with a load of other broke people. He's a waiter, and he's also a very, very poor actor. Think of Joey Tribbiani, I guess, in a way. Joey Tribbiani. Take Chris Evans' ego and just pop it completely out the door. He's not this kind of superstar comic book hero actor. He's Chris Evans acting as a sort of a real guy, I suppose. Chris Evans is great in this. I loved his character. I thought he was fab. And I love the way that Dakota Johnson's framed in this. She's framed in a way that kind of looks at her, but also looks at everything she's looking at. we do get to see things from her perspective. Well, I don't think we get to see anything from the other characters' perspective in this film. I think it's all told from Dakota Johnson's point of view. She's our way into the story, and she is the story. And I didn't know where it was going to go. Crucially, that's the thing. I didn't know where it was going to go because Dakota Johnson's character is so well constructed. She's so well put together as a character that I didn't know whether it was going to be that whole sort of, let the knight in shining armor come and save me, or whether it was let the rugged hero come and save me, or whether it was going to be, I'll just save myself, thanks, I'm all right. And this is a spoiler-free review, so I'm not going to give away anything in particular in this about what happens, but I think that it kind of ends in the right way. It satisfied me. All right, so this film basically, it subverts your expectations. It turns the idea of the rom-com on its head. And it does that because it is a rom-com, but it's not a rom-com. And I think that's a really important thing to remember. It's done ever so subtly and ever so gently. And I expected that from Celine Song. That's exactly what I expected. But it creates a both ends of the spectrum ideal, I guess, in its two male characters. Refined and rich on one side, and rugged and poor on the other side. And it asks our main character to choose between the two of them because, well, as she says herself, her body clock is ticking. It's another one of those concepts that Hollywood has come up with. The shelf life of the female star of a film. You reach 30 odd years old and it's all over, isn't it? You may as well go into a retirement home. I think that's the kind of thing this film is subverting the expectations of. It's turning it on its head and it's giving its lead character agency. But again, without you even noticing it. Really smart. So let's sum up Materialists. This film isn't perfect, but like past lives, it'll 100% get better with age. Once it hits you, it'll hit you. I got that moment with Past Lives in a scene in the street near the end of the movie. Maybe I'll get that same feeling from the Materialists next time I watch it. But from where I am right now, I think that the movie is it's kind of not what I expected. But the more that I've been talking about it, the more that I've mentioned stuff about this film, the more that I've enjoyed it. Maybe that's the key to enjoying Celine Song films. They take their time. You're not just instantly hit with it and it's all over. And maybe that's the same with the Materialists. Maybe the next time I see it, I'm going to be like, well, actually, yeah. I mean, that's pretty amazing. And it's pretty great. And it's one of those films I'm never going to forget. But from where I am now, I reckon this is probably one you could watch at home. I think you could probably wait to watch this on demand or on DVD or Blu-ray or whatever way you watch films at home. Because it's not one of those films you need to run out to the cinema to go and watch. And maybe being in the home environment is somewhere where you can watch it a few more times, You can absorb it the way it should be absorbed, and you can appreciate it the way it should be appreciated. But of course, if you want to see a bit of glitz and a bit of glamour up on the big screen, then by all means, make the trip to the cinema, because it won't be wasted. But yeah, the majority of the audience, I reckon this is one for the home. That was the Materialists, and this is the Film Podcast. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon.